Chris called me I think it's about a year and a half ago, and I mentioned doing this full-length story for Australian Ballet on Oscar Wilde, and my first question really was how much we were doing a biography or whether it was some of his written work, and it was such an exciting news to know that it would be both. So the scenography of the stage is really anchored onto two bookends, which is an earlier part of Oscar's life and then the later part of Oscar's life. And they are centered around two places in London, which I think are significant for that story in a way, on a theme. The first one is Wheeldon's Music Hall in the East End of London, which is of course a very popular venue historically and still remains. And then the other one is Wigmore Hall, which is a very well-regarded recital hall in London for the highest chamber music. And I thought that it was a really good frame for Oscar's life, from the very, very popular and the music hall to something very high art and highbrow in a way. And then Act 2 becomes much more an abstract world. If in Act 1 we're in a very much more detailed, physical, known space, Act 2 I wanted to do something much more abstract, so it's a much more operatic, imagined and also contemporary moment for the audience to be part of. And so that's the story then is still anchored by three things really, and that's because it's about the court, the trial, so there is a dock. It's about the cell, so there's a footprint, the exact dimension of the footprint of Oscar's cell when he was jailed, and an exact replica of the door of his prison cell. And then there's, because we tell the story, some of the story of Dorian Gray, there's an easel there. So then around those three elements, the dock for the trial, the easel for Dorian Gray, and the cell for himself, around those three elements, then we can compose within one space a lot of moments for that second act to happen. So the costumes for these productions really are, of course, based on the Victorian era. That said, they are dance costumes, so they have to be a version of that Victorian archetype. Then we also have in Act 1 a parallel in between Oscar's life and his fairy tale of the Nightingale and the Rose. So I've chosen to put the Nightingale and the Rose in a very distinctive style, very different from Victorian, which is Baroque. So we know, because all of these characters are going to cohabitate on the same stage at the same time, sometimes a very, very quick, rapid succession of scenes. So I wanted the audience to be very clear as to what they were looking at. So there I decided to go to a technique of photo printing the actual manuscript of Oscar Wilde onto some of the fabrics. So we really know that the characters of Dorian Gray are coming off the page. So the costumes are going through really a huge journey and set of decisions as to how they have to be made, what they feel like, what they look like, really to help the audience navigate all those layers of storytelling. So it's a big, big, big ask from the whole costume department, because we need to rethink every single step of the way of how we make those costumes. And it's literally from the bottom up. In a very simple way, it's trying to bring the experience of the audience onto the stage by joining the scenic space with the audience space as much as possible, and yet making them separate enough for the story to be read clearly. So it's that one world, and I think it helps us for doing something that we often try to do in theatre, which is hard to do, which is breaking down that fourth wall even more and making the whole event a very rounded experience of music, performance, storytelling. So I think that's going to be an exciting aspect of that particular production.